All right, everyone ready to dive deep with us again today?
Always exciting to be back.
You know, I love a good thought-provoking idea, and today we're tackling a big one,
Oh, yeah.
antifragility.
Definitely a head scratcher at first.
So we're using Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, Antifragile, Things That Gain from Disorder.
The classic.
But don't worry, we've also got a handy blog post summarizing the key points,
Makes it a bit easier to digest.
so we can really get to the good
For
stuff.
some meat of it.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe let's start with the basics. What does anti-fragile even mean? I feel like it's one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot.
Right. It's definitely more than just a buzzword, though. So it's this idea that instead of just withstanding pressure, some things actually improve and grow stronger because of it.
So it's not just about being tough or resilient.
It goes beyond that. Resilience means bouncing back to where you were before. Anti-fragility is about using those setbacks, those moments of chaos, to actually propel you forward.
Okay, so like turning obstacles into advantages?
Precisely. Imagine the human immune system. Exposure to certain things actually makes it stronger over time.
Wow. Okay, that's a really good way to put it. So we're not just talking about surviving tough times. We're talking about actually thriving in them.
Exactly.
But how do we actually do that? How do we make ourselves or our businesses, anti-fragile?
Well, Taleb introduces a bunch of really cool concepts. One of the most interesting ones is what he calls the barbell strategy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Barbell strategy. Tell me more.
Picture a barbell, with the weights on either end.
Got it. So how does a barbell make something anti-fragile?
Okay, so the barbell strategy is all about managing risk. One end of the barbell is all about safe bets, things that are unlikely to fail.
So that's like the solid foundation of your business.
Right. Stable revenue streams, reliable suppliers, things like that. That's one end of the barbell.
Okay, I'm with you.
Then on the other end of the barbell, you've got high risk, high reward ventures.
So things that could potentially lead to massive growth.
Exactly. Or even disrupt the entire market.
So you're kind of hedging your bets while also being open to like massive change.
You got it. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Instead, you're creating a system that's both stable and adaptable.
That's smart. It seems like finding that balance between the safe and the risky would be crucial, though.
Absolutely. And there's no magic formula. It really depends on your industry, your risk tolerance, all sorts of factors.
It's like walking a tightrope.
In a way, yeah. But the potential payoff could be huge.
This barbell strategy, I got to say, it's a pretty compelling idea. What do you think? Are there any downsides to consider?
Well, one potential downside is it can be tough to implement, especially in organizations that are very risk averse or have really rigid structures.
It definitely requires a certain mindset shift.
For sure.
Okay, so the barbell strategy is one way to cultivate anti-fragility. What other ideas does Taleb explore?
Well, there's this idea of optionality. It's all about having choices, like multiple paths to success.
So kind of like that diversification we were talking about with the barbell strategy.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels, but optionality is more than just, spreading your bets. It's about actively creating options so you can adapt to change.
Okay, I like where this is going. Can you give me like a real world example?
Sure. Think about career development. Let's say someone has really strong skills in their field,
Yeah.
but they also spend time learning other skills that could open up new opportunities.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket, career-wise.
Right. They're creating options, giving themselves more flexibility.
It's like having a bigger toolbox.
It's exactly. More tools, more possibilities.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, feeling kind of stuck. Optionality sounds like a good way to break free.
It definitely can be, and it applies to more than just careers, of course. Finances, relationships, all sorts of areas.
It's about having a mindset that embraces possibilities.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, so this next one, skin in the game. Now that one sounds interesting.
This is all about accountability. Taleb argues that when people have something to lose, they make better decisions.
So, like, putting your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. It's about aligning incentives.
Makes sense. Okay. So how does that play out in the real world?
Well, imagine a company investing in a new product.
Okay.
If the team developing that product also has a financial stake in its success,
They're going to be extra motivated.
you bet they're not just putting in the hours, they're taking on some risk.
So it creates more buy-in, more ownership.
Right. Now think about how this applies to leadership.
Okay, yeah. Those making decisions that affect, like, a lot of people.
Taleb argues that leaders, especially in fields with big impacts, should have skin in the game. They should be exposed to the consequences of their decisions.
That would definitely lead to some interesting changes.
For sure.
Okay, so we've covered the barbell strategy, optionality, skin in the game.
Hmm.
What's next?
Let's talk about via negativa.
Via negativa. It sounds almost like philosophical.
It is, in a way. It's the idea that sometimes we achieve more by removing things than by adding them.
So like decluttering, but for like your whole life.
Uh-huh. That's a good way to think about it. It's about simplifying, focusing on what truly matters.
Sometimes I do my best work when I clear away all the distractions.
Right. There's power in subtraction.
Less is more, as they say.
Mhm.
How would you apply via negativa in a business context?
Well, let's say you're developing a product. Instead of adding a ton of new features, maybe you focus on making the existing ones better.
So it's not just about like constant growth and expansion.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about refining and simplifying.
So we've got these four concepts from Taleb's book: barbell strategy, optionality, skin in the game, and via negativa. I mean, they all seem kind of connected, right?
They definitely all tie together. It's about building systems that are, flexible, adaptable, ultimately anti-fragile.
So it's not about following like a strict set of rules,
Right. It's more of a mindset, a way of thinking about risk and opportunity.
but philosophy almost.
Yeah.
I like that.
So does Taleb give us any practical advice on how to actually cultivate this mindset?
He talks a lot about embracing challenges, seeing failure as a learning experience, not the end of the world.
So not being afraid to take risks.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of decentralization, distributing risk, empowering people on the ground.
So not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
This is all really making me think about how I can apply this stuff to my own life, not just my work.
I think it starts with self-awareness,
Yeah.
figuring out where you're vulnerable, where you might be too dependent on things staying the same.
And then once you know that, you can start building in some of these concepts.
Right. Maybe it's diversifying your skills or your investments or just becoming more comfortable with uncertainty.
It's about being prepared for anything, really.
Yeah, and even embracing the unexpected.
So before we wrap up, is there one big takeaway you'd want our listeners to remember?
I'd say the most important thing is that anti-fragility isn't a destination. It's a journey, a continuous process. We're always learning and adapting.
Exactly. And it's a journey that can make you stronger, more creative, more fulfilled.
Well said. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into anti-fragility. Hopefully you all found it as interesting as we did.
And maybe even a little inspiring.
Definitely inspiring. If you're hungry for more, Taleb's book is definitely worth checking out.
It's a bit dense, but it's packed with great insights.
Until next time, stay curious, everyone. Keep learning and embrace the unexpected.